listening like a thief.
Yeah, so to build on that idea, Tara, we've talked a little bit about formal and informal mentoring, and you've said that some of the back narratives and stuff that you grew up with as a child were things that inspired you to learn more, and in some ways those people probably mentoring you, perhaps even unconsciously. At various points they were mentoring you, and I am aware now that I've been mentored unconsciously loads of times in my life, you know. So how different is the approach of your experience of being consciously mentored in the Rolex International Mentoring Program?
I think with mentoring, I think there can be two types of mentors informally. Mm-hmm. Ones that are, I think both are inspirational. I think there's ones that are successful and ones that are definitely at the other spectrum, that are inspiring mentors that kind of hold like, okay, so I think a purpose of a mentor is to hold a mirror to you, not a mirror of praise or vanity, but just a mirror to you of truth. It's reflected back on yourself.
Yep.
And you know when you meet someone that presents the truth of you to yourself. You know when you meet them. It's like it's an arousal. You can feel it. And I think the ones that aren't successful, those people who come into your life and say, look, this is the truth. This is the truth. This is what happened to me, and it's so easily possible for you. You could go this wrong way. Those mentors should stay in your life briefly. They should just bump you back onto a road where you're getting to the top of the mountain. You understand? And there's not one path. There's the Chinese proverb, there's many paths to the top of the mountain. It's true. There's not just one path. There's not just finish high school, get the best score. I can't even remember. It's not SAT score, it's HSC score. Get the best score at school.
I think they call it ATAR now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Get straight into university.
You're probably all very aware of your ATAR scores at the moment, folks, but don't worry about it too much.
I mean, it's a path, and it's a completely legitimate path, but it's just important to remember that it's not the only one. You know?
Mm. So how long did you spend with your mentor?
There was more to that idea was going to university and blah, 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 blah.
How long did you spend with your mentor?
With my formal mentor?
With your formal mentor.
We spent, under the mentorship, about 18 months, roughly. Yes. And formally, under contract, it was 1 year.
Yep.
And that was being physically in the same area, actually staying in the same house in Nigeria. We stayed in the same house. And then also going across from New York to LA, visiting each other, and also being on other sides of the world. So it wasn't just about one-to-one mentoring. It was emails, it was phone calls, it was even sort of silence and just being given a reading list or, for months on end.
Sometimes mentoring in silence is the best thing mentors can do.
I think so.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, I've got some experience in mentoring within the program that we've designed, and I've done a little bit of it now. The thing that I know I'm now starting to do a bit of tutoring and a bit of subject coordination. The thing that really worked for the students that we first brought in last year, and it's kind of interesting that you've gotten to this place from the way that I think about it, or the way that I thought about that course was developed. You've talked a little bit about that process of coming from school to a different understanding of how this works, and I find, because I've got children at school age now, I find that schools are quite process orientated, if you like. Seems to be very focused on teaching children about the process of
the formula to go from A to B.
And then when you change that learning environment, you're not you can continue at university to learn about processes if you like, but it seems to me, from my perspective, it seems to me that you're learning about substance a little bit more. And processes are fine, we all rely on them, but if the process is a little bit disconnected from the substance, it's not fulfilling in the same way.
Right.
And I think a lot of students find that in their first year, when they've gone into university and they're finding, I thought I was going to have this great career in this particular direction. As you said, I thought I was going to be a journalist. But the process of finding something a little bit more substantive, something more genitive, more inside you is often the thing that I find to be something that mentors can help you a lot with. Quite often, as a student, we tend to talk around the subject in the first few times because you just don't have that grip on getting close to it. And I think mentors are really a cool way of doing that sometimes. Did your mentor help you get a better grip? Did they help you hold on to the substantive part of you that's pushing you out to be right?
Oh, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was at university, I didn't study literature. I studied Indigenous studies. And arts. It was the beginning of a BA.
Yep.
And under my mentorship, I was a few years into my career as a writer.
So Tara, you found that you wanted to do something else at uni. So can you tell us about the Rolex International mentorship that you got once you were already a working author?
Yes, I can tell you. At the time, I wasn't actually in university. Or if I was doing one subject at Wollongong University, which was French.
Yep.
And basically my life trajectory.
Yes, your life trajectory.
My life trajectory was that I was working as a writer. I was writing pieces in The Good Weekend. I don't know if you still have that in Australia.
We do.
Things like that. Griffith Review, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. And I basically was nominated by Julia Lee, who's a novelist in Australia, and she made a film for Cannes a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And she was also previously mentored under this program, the Rolex Mentor and Protege Arts Initiative.
Wow, that's a mouthful too.
Yeah, that is a mouthful. By Toni Morrison.
Yes. In
previous years. Actually, the first round that it started. So what it is, it's an arts initiative, and every 2 years, Rolex sponsors mentors. It's actually the biggest mentor program in the world.
Wow.
In terms of like financial and scope and geography and arts covered and everything. So they cover 6 art forms: literature, music, dance, theatre.
Yep.
I'm going to miss 2.
That's okay.
But you understand.
There's a list.
And it was completely random, and I didn't know Julia Lee beforehand, my nominator.
Yep.
And then there's like a process of scouting, and then finally a proteges. A shortlist was selected, and we all travelled to Nigeria, meeting 3 Americans, and met with our potential mentor for 10 days, and talked about our sort of what we were doing with our lives. Some of the other potential proteges were into master's degrees, had written books, poetry books, or an academic at Brown University. So, and I was just working on writing at the time, and sort of worked out how this mentorship would match, and sort of which person would fit well.
Yes.
Wally Soyinka was the mentor, who is a Nobel laureate,
Mhm.
Nobel Prize winner for literature. And he didn't finish university. And I think that's actually where we connected. I
Sure.
know this is aimed at university students, but there's value in going to university and learning that it might not be the right thing, but actually turning up, you know, there's value in turning up and giving it your, giving it like, see how I lose my language? Giving it your,
Best effort?
that's the word.
Yes.
By the way, we're in Paris, France. I've been here for 3 years, and I'm living in the countryside where no one speaks English. So I don't get to practice English very often. You can leave that in.
I'm quite happy to.
Anyway, so it was about finding that perfect fit between mentor and protege. And we really connected over both not completing university,
Sure.
but going on to have sort of careers and interests and still learning and researching, even if we weren't in the academia structure.
Sure.
So over 18 months, we spent time together, and I learnt more during this mentorship than I had in all my life, especially all my school life. I was introduced to, and I don't know how I missed this at school, but I was introduced to Shakespeare and Greek mythology and things I hadn't actually read before. And ideas about life, and I mean, we lived in Nigeria. I went with my daughter, she was 2 at the time. Her first school was in Nigeria, so she learned things about life too. But my whole scope of understanding what the world was cracked that little bit more, and that's life, isn't it? It just,
Yep.
if you're
Opening
keeping
up the
agile,
cracks.
you know, you're reading, you're researching in the way you interact with people, and not being told that this is what's interesting and this is what's current and this is what you should look at, but sort of sweeping your eyes around the room and really learning what resonates with you, what's important to you, what are you interested in, not what the crowd is.
The maddening crowd or the market. Or,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we're all encouraged to marketise our work, aren't we? You know?
Or like, this is popular, vampires, you should write about that, or whatever it is at the time, you know?
Yeah, and I'm not a Twilight fan myself.
I don't know why I said vampires, because we're staring at a
$1 million
movie, you know? Maybe it was in my subconscious. Anyway, my world cracked open, and I think that's beginning in high school, like 16, I dropped out of high school, and all those years, and I could write a list of the names of the people, and I could probably pinpoint the month of those moments and those mentors who shifted my life and brought me. Sometimes I came back to university at various times, and led me on different paths. It was so crucial and so important to not just like say coming to an age where you're in your late 20s or in your early 30s and saying I'm satisfied, but where you're in the right place.
Yep.
You know, and it's the right place for you.
Mm.
And you can feel it as you're being nudged by these mentors in these moments that you're following your bliss. I wanted to ask you, Sean, how you saw mentoring within academia to be similar or different from mentors in the arts, and that relationship between mentor and protege, or mentor and mentee.
Yep. So I've got a little bit of experience mentoring outside of academia because I come from a construction background and I've had lots of apprentices on the way.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of thinking about how am I going to allow this fairly abstract thing that I'm talking to this person about? How am I going to create a way that makes sense for them? And that's it's kind of interesting because construction-wise, it's shape, it's geometry, it's all that kind of stuff. In academia, though, it's conceptual most of the time. I often found that the idea was to, once again, find something in that person's trajectory that gives them a grip on the idea. The first year that I did this program, one of the great fun things as the head tutor or whatever in the program was to turn around to the entire group of kids on their first day in there and say, I'm never going to mark a report card, I'm never going to judge you morally, I'm never going to talk to your parents. This is about you. And I think mentoring is very much a process of allowing the mentee. That's my experience in mentoring, allowing the mentee to come into it.
Yep, and to sort of control what and sort of help guide you as a mentor in what they need. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And as I've got a few years under my belt with this now, I've got a few graduating students who are my first mentees who come back and they've started off doing psychology or something like that, but they've really gone into a not a completely different area. They're still focused around that, but they're using their own backgrounds or whatever to move into social work and to do things like that. Several of the young guys have become teachers now. That they had other ambitions in the first place, but they've certainly gone into being teachers.
I think the difference between being mentored and being a mentor is you just have more, I think, for myself, I had more compassion, or I hoped that I had more compassion, but it's when you're sort of young and kind of like searching for what am I supposed to do, like what am I going to fulfill, like what's my motivation, again back to this, because I think that really you need to know what your motivation is before you're making any choices, or when you're taking a turn, or when you're applying for something, whatever it is, you have to know what's my motivation. Like, is this really true? Doing some scholarship in London or whatever it is, like, is this really going to lead to that self-satisfaction, that satiated is it?
Yeah, that's a nice word, isn't it?
What?
I like it.
Yeah.
Satiated. Am I going to be sated?
Sated?
Sated, yeah.
Am I going to be sated, like, in my soul?
Is it fulfilling? Yeah.
So I think as a mentor, I just had to remember that I had those questions and that unknowing, and I still have it. You know, I'm still learning to be human, and you just, I think you just become more relatable. You understand that this person has the potential, this mentor has the potential to really help me or inspire me or show me something that I haven't seen before. That's from something.